Hello, my name is Kassi with LDRS Creative, and I have a confession. I have a lot of watercolors. Like a ridiculous lot of watercolors. This isn't even all of them. But it's part of my job to learn about and study the different watercolors and different brands so that I can teach other people. You don't need this many watercolors. You can have just a few watercolors and make beautiful paintings if you learn how to mix your colors. Let's take a look at two very common colors in even beginner sets, quinacridone rose and phthalo green blue shade. Now obviously each one of these colors can be used on their own, but when you mix them together you can get a number of other different colors. Let's take a look. To see what colors you can make from a limited palette, you want to start by creating a puddle of one color and a puddle of another color. So for this I have my quinacridone rose and my phthalo green. I'm going to start with my quinacridone rose and I'm putting that on neat. So just like it comes out of the tube or out of the pan. For my next stripe, I added just a tiny bit of green. For each consecutive stripe, I'm going to add a little bit more green to that puddle. And as we move through, you can see that it is shifting to a purple, and then into a blue-violet, into a blue, moving into a turquoise, and finally ending up back at our green. Look at all of these different colors that we can make with just two paints. And that's not even touching the light and darks. By taking any one of these colors and adding water to it, you can get varying degrees of light and dark paint. If these were markers, you would have to have tons of markers just to do what we just did with two paints. Now I know most of you are card makers, so let's look at a practical way to use this color mixing idea. I have already heat embossed the Eucalyptus stamp from LDRS Creative onto some LDRS Creative watercolor paper. This will give us a great playground for playing with our paint mixes. And you can do this with any two colors that you want to explore. So let's bring back in that mixing plate where we're exploring our color, our green and our pink. These are the two colors we're going to look at today. I've grabbed a couple of brushes and I have some water up there in the corner. To start, I'm just going to pick a random spot in that middle of the mix. I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm just picking up some color from the palette. And then I'm just going to fill in one of the leaves. Now because this is heat embossed, the embossing forms kind of like a well to contain your paint. Now that second brush was just water to help the paint move. Now I'm picking up paint from another part of my plate, so it'll be a different color, and dabbing that in. This is a wet on wet mixing technique. So for my next leaf, I just picked another spot on my palette, so it will be a different color. I'm spreading that out with that clean water. And each time I put my brush on that palette, I'm going to a different spot. So I'm not going to be getting that same color anywhere else. But all of these colors will look good together because they are made from the same two basic colors. Using a limited color palette is a great way to keep color harmony and keep your colors looking like they all belong together. So I'm just going to keep dipping and dabbing in and doing some different wet and wet mixes just to see what I get. Now I already know that these two colors are absolutely dreamy together, but you can get some really interesting mixes from colors you wouldn't expect that go well together. This is a really fun way to get to know your paints and the wide range of possibilities within just a few colors. I know you can't always see where I am dabbing on my plate, but I thought you might want to see a closer look at what I'm actually painting here. Using embossing powder for our lines really makes this a very easy watercolor project, and it is so relaxing to just fill in each one of those little areas with different random colors. Here you can see just how beautiful those leaves turned out. Now, because we embossed this with a clear embossing powder, you can't see the stem. In order to see the stem, we're going to add a background. For this background, I'm just adding some clean water around my eucalyptus. I'm just doing half of it at a time so I can control my water. And I'm just adding in random colors in random spots and letting the water move it around. To avoid a hard edge, I'm going to dab off the edge with a paper towel. Just keep that nice and soft. I want to keep this pretty dreamy. Then I'm going to do the other side. So again, just getting some water on there. Because these are both staining colors, by adding water first, I know that my background won't have any harsh colors. I'm just going to keep adding a few colors here and there, soften that edge. Then I'm just going to make sure that all of my paint color goes right up to that stem so it defines that stem. Add in a little bit more water if you want to create some runs. Look how dreamy this is. I absolutely love it. You can also add in some splatters. Splatters that go onto wet paint are going to be very soft and diffused. Any splatters that go onto dry paper will be hard and defined. So you can choose when you want to splatter to get those different effects. I'm going to dry that with a heat gun, being careful not to remelt my embossing powder. Some of my bigger petals I'm dabbing off, and you can see that it lifted some of that paint to give it an even more splotchy background look. This is such a fun and easy way to learn about your colors. And of course we're going to turn this into a card. So I'm pulling out my Misty, and I'll line up my eucalyptus stamped panel to the bottom corner, or the top corner, whichever one you prefer. And I'm taking the sentiment from the eucalyptus stamp set, and I'm just figuring out where I want to place that. Pick it up with the Misty lid. And I'm going to use some Raven ink from LDRS Creative. This is a hybrid ink, so it works well with both alcohol markers and watercolors. Just ink up my stamp and then press it onto my paper. Now, it is not uncommon on watercolor paper to need to stamp it more than once. My ink pad is also very dry, and I actually have a refill, I just haven't done it yet. I need to add some more ink to my ink pad. Once you have a good solid stamped image, you can pull it off of your Misty. Next, I'm going to take this nested posted collage. I'm taking that border die, and I will use that to cut out my eucalyptus. So I'm just lining it up on my panel, and then I will tape that down and take it over to my die cutting machine. And here it is cut out. I want the panel behind it to match using those same colors. So I have another piece of LDRS Creative watercolor paper, and I'm going to bring back in my mixing palette. And I'm just going to do some random colors along the edges of this paper. You will only see the very edges of it, so it doesn't have to be painted all the way through. I'm making sure I'm getting a good variety of those colors. Just kind of very messily throwing that on there. Now, it doesn't look good right now, but it will work, I promise. So I'm going to clear off my table. Here's where I touched wet paint, so I have to fix that. Don't touch wet paint, folks. I'm going to dry that off. Now on to assembly. I have a top folding A2 card base. I'm going to adhere on that painted panel that we did. Line that up. Pull this off camera so I can double check my edges without you seeing my head. And there we have our card base ready. To attach the eucalyptus panel, I'm going to use some foam tape to give it a little bit of dimension. Then I will attach that to our card base. I absolutely love how this turned out. It's so soft and dreamy. I love exploring colors in this way, and I hope you will too. If you give this a try, be sure to share with us in the LDRS Creative Facebook group, as well as on Instagram. You can tag us and you can tag me. I would love to see what you do. If you have any watercolor questions, be sure to leave a comment below so that we know what you want to see next. I hope you have an absolutely fantastically creative day, and I'll see you soon.